This is Ashley Billups with the case study for Module 12. So a little background information. So the scenario that's going on here is that I am Susan Potter. I was just appointed as the new principal at the new middle school for Lightville Community School District. Again, some background, as I said, is Lightville District. It is a rural but growing community. They recently made the unpopular decision to construct a new middle school to make room at their two current schools. Mrs. Potter, myself, was appointed as the principal of this new school. The plan here is that I was hired a year in advance in order to make staffing decisions, organize the school programs such as curriculum and extracurricular activities, as well as collaborate with the construction managers while the school is being developed. The steps that need taken here is that I will develop an advisory board of new teachers and parents to help make the decisions of how the school will be constructed. Mrs. Potter insists that all of the board members should have an equal say and wants the community to feel ownership of the school. So if we're looking at the advisory board, some of the different people we see here are myself. So Mrs. Potter organized the board to make decisions that would represent all of the stakeholders. She does not want herself to be the chair of the board and thinks that all board members should provide input in making the vision statements for the school. So it's not my district. I'm new here, so she's really wanting all of the community members' input on how it should be developed. Helen is the chair of the board. She agreed to this with Mrs. Potter's help. She is trying to encourage Mrs. Potter, however, to make the vision statement on her own, ensuring that the board will back Mrs. Potter no matter what. So Helen really didn't want to take this step, but is trying now with Mrs. Potter's help to get Mrs. Potter to be the one who is taking that leadership role. We have Mr. Kelby, who is the PE teacher, who has many ideas on how the school should operate, but doesn't want to argue with his peers. He supports Helen and doesn't want Mrs. Potter and wants Mrs. Potter to be responsible for making the vision statement. So he agrees here with Helen. He has lots of these different opinions on how the school should function and things that he would like to see in the school, but doesn't want to be the one who's going about implementing this because he wants to save face with his peers. And then lastly, we have some parent members of the advisory board. So we have two here. They also agree with Kelby and Miss Helen that Miss Potter should develop the vision statement, and they are giving her their full support in doing so. Some legal or ethical issues here. So we really don't have any legal issues at the moment that are presented in the case. That doesn't mean as the story develops, depending which scenario or case we pick, that there couldn't be some legal issues that do develop. But currently there are some minor ethical issues that we can see here. Mrs. Potter knows, based on principle and her own moral conviction, that she should not be making the vision statement because she knows to do her best job and needs to represent her constituents, and that's not going to happen if she is the one that is making it. So she's kind of breaking her moral ground if she complies with the advisory board, which is fine now. It's not that big of a deal. But if this type of thing continues, where they're continuing to ask her to break her moral compass, then we could develop into a real issue. In the third section here, so what's happening is that as the new principal in a supportive but kind of uncooperating district, Mrs. Potter knows that she needs to develop a mission that is based on the stakeholders' views, but without their compliance, she's really unsure of how to proceed. Some different people that we see going on throughout the case study. So we have myself, Mrs. Potter, who is the principal, newly appointed principal at the new middle school. We have Joe Rawlings, who is the superintendent of the district. We have some various school board members. One that we know in particular is Helen Burke's brother. He is a farmer who is in favor of the new district or the new school. This is really a vital person here because not many of the farmers of this rural community were in favor of the school because it is going to raise their taxes. So having one who is and who's also on the school board is really monumental. We have teachers that are mentioned here. Most of the teachers for this new middle school were hired from other schools in the district. And then we have our community members. So as I said, it's a rural community. We have these rural landowners who didn't want to go into more debt just to have a new middle school. But then on the other hand, we also have a growing community. So we have lots of new young families that are moving into the district as well. And then the other people we see here are the advisory board members. So we have Helen Burke, who stepped up as the board chair. We have Dan Kelby, who is a PE teacher. And we have some parents on the board as well. The place that we are situated in this scenario is, again, the Lightville School District. It's set between two different small townships. Of these townships and the people in this community, over 60% of these residents live on a farm. That is very rural. Despite this fact, our population in this district is growing and growing 2% each year. The programs that need developed at the Lightville School. So we're developing the entire new community middle school. It is going to be a 6th through 8th middle school. And they're taking the 6th grade out of the current elementary school and putting them in this new middle school. It will be a public school, and the curriculum will be developed by myself, Mrs. Potter, but it has not yet been decided upon. So some important background information that we need to know here. So there is some potential damage that could happen here. So the situation and conflict has potential for damage to all of the stakeholders involved. There has been a lot invested in this community financially and emotionally. If the planning and opening does not go as planned for the stakeholders and the non-stakeholders alike, some people will be upset over the results. So regardless, this was a really big decision that happened in this community. Like I said, financially, people are going into more debt here, taxes are being raised, and emotionally, it's been kind of a drawn out kind of debate throughout the community on whether or not this should happen. And then again, different people involved. It really is the entire community that is going to be infected. Everyone really had an opinion one way or another, whether they were in favor for this or not. The school board members, they are really, all of the decisions are coming back on them. They're the ones, after all, who did vote in favor of this happening. We have our superintendent, who is the leader of the movement for the additional school. So he's the one who initially brought the people in to see even if a new school was a good option for this district. We have the principal, who is myself. Now that the superintendent has kind of got things running, the organization and leadership has kind of been passed on now to the principal. We have our new hire teachers. They bought into the vision, so most of them, as I said, are from this district. And so they knew this is really a school and mission that they wanted to be behind, which is why they all joined up to be now at the middle school. So they've bought into the vision that we are trying to develop. And then we have our advisory board. Again, they have been given the task to assist the new principal in making the decisions necessary to get the school running. Other important background information, so of our stakeholders, we're trying to get it so all of the stakeholders have been given some sort of notice of this situation. So whether that's the school board members, superintendent, teachers, and parents, whether they're on the advisory board, they are aware that Ms. Potter and the advisory board are the ones in charge of making the major decisions. So while the stakeholders may have not been aware of this particular situation that's happening, they have entrusted Ms. Potter when hiring her to make the decisions that are best for the district and for all of the stakeholders. So they may not be aware that this incident between the advisory board and Ms. Potter is happening, but they did trust Ms. Potter to get things running, and so with that, they're trusting her to make the best decision here. Things that we can learn more about the situation. So in order to make a more informed decision, it would be beneficial to look up the vision and mission statement of the other two schools in the district. This would allow myself as the principal to see if my own personal values and principles are aligned with the rest of the district. I could also, again, poll various stakeholders throughout the district to see what their beliefs are and how they line up with my own. And then, do I know enough to make a decision? So at this point, I personally feel like I do not. I am new to the district and do not feel comfortable making decisions based on the values of a community that I am new to. So since I'm not from this district, I'm newly implanted here, I don't feel as if I would be a good representation of their beliefs. So with that being said, we have some different options on how I could proceed. So option one would be taking the least amount of action, and this would be to comply with the advisory board's wishes and make the statement on my own. So this would be kind of the least confrontational option. A consequence that would face of option one would be that the statement then is not really going to be a true representation of all of the stakeholders. If I'm developing it myself without any really other input, it's going to be based off my beliefs and not necessarily the community's. Therefore, all of the future decisions could potentially be skewed. If we're basing things off of this vital statement, it could throw things off continually in the future. The second option of how we can move forward is taking the most action possible here, and that would be really forcing the advisory board to assist me in making the statement. So kind of a consequence along with this forceful decision is that I would start off on a bad term with the advisory board, and it could potentially create hostile environment. And then working in the future, this could prevent cooperation on decisions that need to be made, and it would potentially lead the board to trusting me less, since I went against their wishes at this first initial decision. So they've all said many times currently that they have put their full trust in me and will support me. But if I go against them on this very first decision, they may kind of backtrack on that statement. And then the third option here is kind of the best compromise between the first two. I here would ask the advisory board their input in more of a non-intrusive manner, which would allow me to gauge their opinions without really forcing them to assist me in the actual writing process of the statement. Consequences here are smaller, they're still there. Some consequences is that the advisory board, again, would not have met its true intention. So it was initially developed where everyone would have an equal say, and I would not be the person in charge. This is true for option one as well, but in this case, I would be the one who's taking that initial leadership role, and it would hard to give that back and let other people have that role after I've already taken it. So that would kind of skew the advisory board for future decisions as well. If we look at the pros and the cons of each of these, so pro of option one, and so looking at the positives are that the advisory board and I would be able to stay on good terms. I would be able to meet their expectations and know that it will get done in a timely manner if I'm the one completing it. So they've trusted me, and I feel like I could still do a satisfactory job of completing it, enough that the general person wouldn't have much to complain about. Along with that, so the negatives would be that the statement wouldn't really be based around the stakeholders. It'd be a quality statement. I think I have quality beliefs, but it wouldn't necessarily represent my constituents. So this could set the precedence that I will continue to take charge within the advisory board rather than us working as a team, which is what it was initially intended for. Option two, some of the positives of this is that the vision statement would reflect the stakeholders of the district, and that is our true goal. And the advisory board in the future would understand the tasks that would be worked on and collaborated as a team. So if they did this with me, they'd know what type of collaboration was needed of them. And the negatives of option two are that the advisory board who had previously put their trust in me may begin to question my leadership and my ability to make decisions. The norm may become that in me taking charge in the forefront position of the advisory board rather than us being equals, which is what it was initially intended for. And then option 3, positives of option 3 are that I could keep the board's affirmation while still developing a mission statement that reflects the community and would allow me to get to know my constituents better since I am the only new person to the district. So this would be good here in the fact that I could meet their expectations while also meeting the things that I need of myself to create a quality mission statement. And then some negatives of option 3 are that it would be taking longer and a larger and demanding role on the board than I had initially intended. And then it will be a lot more work now if we have to go do all of this kind of background research to complete the mission statement than if we were to just do it together in the first place. So the steps would be a much longer list of a to-do list here. So as we look at these 3 options and try to pick the best one, so we're trying to choose the best option here. In order to keep the peace and prevent upsetting the peers and coworkers that I have now, while trying to do what's best for my district and its constituents, I have decided to move forward with option 3. In order to implement this option, I will be contacting each of the stakeholders to gather their opinions, values, and beliefs. While doing this, I will notify them on how I will be handling the matter. So it would be at this point that I would update them on what the situation and what is happening. I believe personally that option 3 is the most creative. It keeps everyone happy, and it's a beneficial way to handle this case while pleasing everyone and getting the tasks done in an efficient and a positive manner. So if we look at the actual action plan to accomplish step 3, so we have our list here of the steps that need to take in order to get this implemented. So the first thing that would happen here would be to communicate with the stakeholders. So whether that's our superintendent, school board members, or the advisory board. This would allow me to update them on the action that I would be taking. And I could have mentioned to them at this point how this is diverging from my original plan and intentions for the advisory board, but that I felt like the current situation, this is the best option that I have to move forward. So I'd let them know kind of what's going on and what route I'm taking in order to kind of counteract this. From there, the second action I would take would to begin collecting information on the values, norms, and educational beliefs and views of the stakeholders in my new district. I could do this by talking to each person individually. This would be the best option. If that was not feasible, I would make an online survey that they could fill out electronically. So the goal here would be to talk to the school board members, to my other staff members, and people on the advisory board in person to kind of gauge and get a feeling and understanding for what values, norms, beliefs, goals, and principles they have for this new school year in person. This would also allow me to get to know the people of my district at the same time. So after I gather these opinions, I could complete this step, again, as I said, talking to people individually. After gathering this information, I would then reflect upon the time I just spent with my coworkers and my constituents and the current vision statement of the other 2 schools in the district. This would allow me to get a better grasp on what it is the community wants out of their new middle school. So I really need this time to reflect and think upon what have I seen in my time here, what have I seen from the other statements at the other 2 schools, and how is it that I want to go about developing this actual statement. After properly reflecting on the situation, I would begin making a draft of the vision statement that I felt captured the heart and the soul, values, and priorities of the new middle school. So after I reflected, kind of gathered all my information, then I would still start making the draft of what I would want to propose as my final plan. And then now that the draft is finished, I would be presented to the advisory board to receive additional input. If they felt that it met their standards, then we would move forward and adopt the vision statement. If not, we could make tweaks in order to fit their vision also. So after being approved by the stakeholders, the statement would be unveiled to all of the other staff members and posted throughout the school for when the school actually opens. However, if this doesn't go as planned, whether it's the stakeholders that are uncooperative, or whether the information that I collected was subpar in helping me develop the statement, I would then resort to asking specific members of the advisory board, school board, and the superintendent individually, who have all demonstrated their support for me, in order to assist me in developing the vision statement. So if I wasn't able to do this by talking and gathering information from everyone, I would then go back and talk to those few key people that I trust and ask them on what kind of changes that I would need to make in revising the vision statement. And then my reflection on the case study. So this assignment has been very beneficial for me as a teacher and as a future leader because it has forced me to make these hard decisions. School leaders are constantly forced to make hard decisions every single day. This case study has allowed me to make theoretical decisions and reflect upon those decisions at the same time. This will allow me to be one step ahead in the same situation of developing a mission statement at my future school, but it is also preparing me to make those tough and small decisions that can make substantial impacts on my district. So having the opportunity to think about it now in advance has given me a lot of time to reflect on the decision-making process that I see on an everyday basis at my school. And knowing kind of the steps and the mental clarity that it takes, as I see these decisions being made in the future, I'll be able to think about them, incorporate them into how I would want to make decisions in the future.